Welcome back to the Two Comma Club podcast. Today I'm joined by Lloyd Ross, and I'm really excited about this episode. He is the author of Money Buys Happiness, and this is going to be a really cool episode. So I'm pumped. I'm ready to dive in. So Lloyd, if you wouldn't mind kind of telling people a little bit about your background and a little bit more beyond what it is that you've written in terms of your book there, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me on, John. Really appreciate it. This is a fun show. I was excited to jump on this morning from down under here in Australia. And it's been a wild journey, like the entrepreneurship journey. It's so strange how it happens. But God, I think every single entrepreneur journey starts with a bad manager at your job. And so I had a senior manager in my job. I was working in Dubai on big projects, the F1 track there and stuff like that in my 20s. And I got tired of the commute. So I actually resigned, jumped down into real estate sales, which is cool. Very, very difficult, commission only. So I learned a lot of good things, learned how to run a small business there. And then actually I was like, I need to get out of here. I need to flip and transition out of this office life, you know? And so I was like, what can I do? And then my sister introduced me to actually network marketing, which is where a lot of entrepreneurs start their journey. And it allowed me to kind of develop the skills to build sell low ticket to then create some recurring income through this, supplements business. And we were able to build that, my wife and I, in about 4 years. We built that to about 150K in profits a year. And that allowed us to then transition out of our jobs, which we did. But then when you have this recurring income and we had some assets and we had no debt, we were in a position where we had a lot of time. And that's what allowed us to then look at other ways to, build a business. And of course, I've been following Russell Brunson for a very long time and connected with a guy who's now my business partner. And we, in a little cafe here locally, we launched our first book, Money Grows on Trees, put a little course to it, put some ads to it, and then realized very quickly that we didn't have enough a premium value offer enough to scale the ads. So we kind of figured out through, I guess it was a multitude of different mentors that you had to develop this business further. And so we did that. We wrote a new book, Money Buys Happiness. In that we talk about our mentorship program, and we started to scale that a few years ago. And we're now in our fifth year, I think. And won a 2 Comma Club award with it. Still going strong, great business. We're trying to get to the next level now of what that looks like. And it's a fun game. So that's kind of where that's the background, effectively.
That's fantastic. I love that. Very relatable in terms of wanting that freedom and being able to get out of it and all that stuff using what sounds like financial literacy more than anything, and it's such a integral part of, what we need in terms of society and just running with how money works. Right. And it's crazy that they don't teach that in school,
Well, it's good for me they don't teach it in school, but,
Amen.
But yeah, it's funny because on my network marketing journey, I was, around people. We had lots of trips all around the world. And there's this one particular trip we're on our way to Fiji, and I was sitting in a big bus with one of the top earners. She earned that month, I think, 400,000 in that month. And what was fascinating about the conversation was she had no idea about taxes. She had no idea about investing, none. And here she was earning tremendous, unbelievable income. And it just dawned on me. I thought, do people not know these basic financial principles? And it turned out that they don't, which was kind of shocking for me. So that's kind of what then prompted me eventually through a friend of mine. He challenged me to write a book, and he said, you need to put this in a book. And so I just, like any entrepreneur, you just think that everyone knows what you know, but they don't, so it was a not great way to tap into my previous years developing financial literacy. Now I've been able to monetize that knowledge.
100%. And it's like the next evolution of that information is not only knowing how to operate from the basics of finance to then having an additional skill set on top of it that can bring you essentially an abundance of money. Right. And it's really powerful stuff. So what was kind of your first introduction into the online world of business and marketing in that respect?
Well, it's actually interesting because when I left my job and got into the property sales business with my dad, we were doing it's a small family business, been around for a long time. And how they were doing marketing when I joined was they didn't have a website. They didn't have it was all outbound telemarketing. So direct outbound, cold telemarketing. And then they'd set appointments. I'd go out to the people's homes, sit in their home, do a pitch to sell a property, and that was the business. And if they bought a property, I made commission. Very tough business. Like if you think about the toughness of that business, it's very tough. So after a couple of years, I thought we needed to flip this. And so at that point in 2000, and must have been 2015, Facebook ads were becoming a little bit more mainstream, a little bit more well adopted, and it was very untested from us. But we eventually just decided to I remember the day I terminated all the telemarketers because it's just costing so much without the lead gen. And we started doing inbound Facebook ads, and it just turned out to be better, higher ROI of higher quality leads. And that was my first introduction of like inbound ads into appointments, into high ticket selling, high ticket selling houses. But that was probably this, my beginning learnings of it. And then after that, getting into network marketing, I didn't need to run ads. It was all organic, because in network marketing, it's through word of mouth marketing. So we built that business organically, no ads really used. I played around a little bit with it, but it wasn't until we developed our current financial education business that we really hit the accelerator on the ads, like we're trying
Yeah.
to spend as much as we can.
I got the pleasure of being at the Inner Circle meeting in Vegas last September. And
Wow.
do you know who I think it's Bill Von Fumetti is?
I don't know who Bill is, but he
Well,
sounds he sounds good.
yeah, he's in the bookkeeping space, and from what I understand, he's leading the game on that ad spend side. But it's wild. He's done I think $150,000 a day is what he's actively spending, which just
A day?
blows my mind.
A
Right,
day?
a day. Isn't that crazy? It's like it's wild to think when we know what paid ads can do. It's the idea that essentially when you get it right, you put in $1, you get out two or more, right? And it's like a license
Right,
to print money. So you
right.
scale it up as much as you can, but the access to credit and cash that you have to be able to do that daily is just
Yeah.
unfathomable. It's crazy.
We I think our highest to date is 100,000 a month. We're at 100,000 a month. That's our
That's
we're not,
awesome,
but yeah, like oh my god, I'd love to spend 150,000 a day.
right? Wouldn't it
Just
be
call up
fun?
American Express and tell them that we need some more credit. But yeah,
Yeah,
mm.
it's pretty
Wow, that's a
wild.
that's a real vision for me. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. From what I understand, Russell Brunson himself is going after that right now as well. So if you want
All
some
right.
friendly competition,
Oh my
um,
goodness.
yeah.
Okay.
So at any rate, I would love to know how it is that you learned about how to do ads more or less successfully, like being able to actually do things that are needed in order to get the right clients.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I did Russell's 100-day, sorry, what was it? One funnel away challenge. And in that, there was a little booklet that came with it. And he did some videos. He said, I don't really understand ads, but I run them. And I was like, that's interesting. Why doesn't he doesn't do his own ads? And I read this book, or a friend of my business partner actually sent me this book by Dan Sullivan called The Who, Not the How. And that really shifted my mindset. And so I actually don't know how to run ads.
Ah, I like that.
Like I know the principles of Facebook ads. I mean, I've been around it for a long time, but I don't sit there and do the testing of the. I don't run the business ad account. I don't get the media buyer. I don't come up with the creative. Like my business partner does that. But what I noticed was a collaboration was what allowed me to scale faster. And we collaborate. I've got two collaborative partners. One he does the front end, the sales funnel and the ads and so forth. He's in charge of the marketing. And our other collaboration partner is in charge of the acquisitions, the sales, so the sales and the appointment setting. So I don't do either of those things in our business.
Yeah.
I just do the delivery side, which is so we have this three-pronged approach. And now, without a doubt, if I sat there and learned ads, I could learn ads.
Mhm.
But it's just, yeah, I learned to try and step out of things as fast as I can. Like I don't think I'll ever run ads myself. I'd always just find someone better than me, and that wouldn't be hard. So I think that's what the difference is, and that's really what I think holds people back from building a business is they think mistakenly they've got to do everything themselves. They've got to be the tech person, the ads person, the sales person. And what I've learned is you can't, if you want to get going bigger, you've got to give away your profits to other people. And
Yeah.
like 10% of a watermelon is a lot more than 100% of a grape.
Yep.
And I
Amen.
think people are trying to hold on to their, yeah, they're trying to hold on to the grapes.
Hmm.
And I was like, get rid of the grape, man. Go after the watermelon and take a 10 or 20, 20% slice of a watermelon's way better.
Definitely.
That's kind of how it eventuated.
If you're interested in learning more about the tidbits and advice that they have, then you should consider subscribing to the Two Comma Club newsletter, where you'll get daily updates and advice on the podcast and the things that we are learning from the individuals who have made at least $1 million. Just go to 2ccnewsletter.com or click the link in the description down below and subscribe.
Yeah. A lot of that concept there, I think, is the conversation around abundance versus like scarcity mindset and things of that nature. And
Without a doubt, yeah.
yeah,
It's tricky. It's not easy to go, hey, every month I pay huge commissions and it's great, but you're right. You have to almost not be attached to money. It's a
hmm
weird thing,
it
you know.
is.
And
It's
you've got
kind of
to
like
see other
the
people succeed at the same rate.
what's that?
One of our sales girls, she'd make more than most business owners. I think like you'd almost want your salespeople to make as much, if not more, than you. Like it's
Yeah,
totally
yeah.
fine. You don't have to get all hung up about it because they're doing the hard slog.
Hmm.
All I've got to do is just hang out and play chess every day. Like it's not hard for me, but it's harder. So they do deserve to be paid. You know.
Yeah, definitely. And it's really fascinating the results that you get when you let go of things and you make room for, the opportunities to flood in rather than trying to sit there and more or less manhandle every aspect of the business and like
Totally.
letting people
Yeah.
operate within their 20%, right? It's like that eighty
Yes.
twenty rule.
Yeah. Yeah. If
Eighty
everyone's in their
percent of
zone
your
of genius, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it
exactly.
works.
That's
Yep.
awesome. So tell me a
Agreed.
little bit about, you've told me how it is that you got your product out there through paid ads and things of that nature. What is kind of the process that you guys did to nurture all of the individuals that you're getting as leads?
Yeah, so our leads aren't really leads; they're book purchases, so they're kind of customers, So,
Very fair.
yeah, so once they come in, they're customers, and so we will, text message them and say hello, and did you get everything okay? And you have a nice and simple email nurture sequence, deliver the product, follow up. We have a Facebook group they go into. We nurture them in there further. We've got a daily Telegram money tips that they access. There's some cool bonuses attached to the book
Yeah.
that kind of integrates them a little bit further into the community. And then we really just, we nurture through value emails, and then we obviously, suggest they have a chat with our team, and we offer, coaching sessions. We'd run some master classes here and there. And off the back of those emails and master classes and coaching sessions, they will be in a position where if they want to work more closely with me, they have the opportunity to do so, and they'll get the coach to tell them, or the salesperson to tell them what that looks like. So yeah, the nurturing process is through the group, emails, text messaging, so forth, and just even through my Instagram, as well, just nurturing through that uh, relationship there. That's how we develop them into a position where they feel like they want to buy.
That's really
So
cool.
yeah, it's it's pretty straightforward. We always want to get book more clients and get more clients. So it's one thing in a business. You solve one problem, then you need to solve the next problem.
Yeah.
Like if you solve the lead, you need to solve your book call rate, and if you solve that, then you need to make sure you're solving your delivery and your recurring and referrals. And then once you
Hmm.
solve that, then you have to go back to the front end and see if you can do more ads. So it's one. If you scale the front end, you have to solve two problems on the back end of sales and delivery. And then once you've solved them, you go back to the front end and you try and repeat that process over time, I think, as I understand it.
Yeah, I would agree with you full heartedly. It's there's this concept that I thought of a while back, and it's the only variable that I would add to that is one that you're already alluding to, and that's the idea of like there's leads, there's conversion rates, there's pricing, and then fulfillment and all that, and it's like they're all interrelated, and you have to keep tweaking every piece and part to basically maximize your output, and that's really
Yeah.
cool. So
Yeah. Yeah.
what are
I think we've done a good job of that. For the last couple of months, I guess I've been working on the delivery side. And one thing we've done is actually, we learnt this from, what's his name? Garrett
Garrett White?
from Garrett White.
Yeah.
He said, when you're facilitating, you want to just kind of facilitate. You don't want to. It's almost like you've got to use systems and tools to facilitate your delivery rather than be there doing it a lot of it yourself all the time.
Yeah.
So we've tried to systemize a lot of that. And one thing we've recently started to do is gamify the content. So we're putting quizzes at the end, and if once they get an unlock for, there's 5 steps that talk about in my book. When they get to the end of the first step, there's, like the hat, they'll unlock the hat. And then they get to the second step, they unlock a ticket to our event. Then they get to the third step and they unlock a physical copy of the book. And then the fourth step, they unlock a one-on-one with me. And then so there's this unlockable process that incentivizes them to actually complete the content that's there, so that there's not as much requirement from me to actually coach them on the weekly calls that we do, the group coaching sessions, because there is so much value in content if people sit down and watch it, but they're just not incentivized to. So we have to make it a bit of a game, obviously, because we all learn better with games. And so if we gamify it and we incentivize it, then it's gravy. And we've got a full-time client manager. She collects people. She puts them in little group pods, and if they come into our program and they fall through a crack, it's because they wanted to find it and jump out of it. It's very hard to not be supported in our program, which I think is half the battle of the coaching or the education space, where, God, how many people sign up to education and don't complete the education?
Yeah, for real.
Even at universities, how many people drop out or don't finish, and they've paid $100,000 to do that. So there's a big. We don't want to be the education provider that doesn't, get the results for people, obviously.
Yeah, I can imagine that one of the largest pieces of that is accountability and things of that nature.
Yes,
so how are you guys
yeah.
going and holding your customers accountable to actually getting the results?
Well, we give WhatsApp access, and we do WhatsApp broadcast reminders for the call. We do 2 live calls a week. We replay them. We've got a closed Facebook group for our main big clients, and we've got a full-time client manager. We've got group pods with some of our elite members in with the new people, with 3 or 4 of them to create community. We've got great, simple, easy to digest content that I even simplified even more. Like, you have to make it so simple. And if it's not, if you think it's simple, look again. And then gamify the content, incentivize the content. We even actually shrunk our offer from a year down to 6 months because we realized that people actually didn't need a year. And I would actually say too that they probably don't even need a year. I think most higher ticket programs could be done in 90 days.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. That's what I'm learning.
Yeah, I don't remember what the concept is exactly, but the idea is something along the lines of like, however much time you have to do something is exactly how long it's going to take you to do it.
It's called Parkinson's law.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's a time concept. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a fascinating one, really, because it's like, it provides that urgency that really like lights a fire under your butt when you're all motivated rather than just acting out of discipline to go get the stuff done.
Yeah.
And it's great.
Yeah, that's right. It is interesting that, and you're exactly right. But that's why I think too we did drop it, because it's like, you don't need 12 months. Because if a student is hanging around for 12 months and has learned a ton in the first 90 days, they end up trying to be the coach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like, get out, sense. You're done. You go off.
Right.
Or go to the next offer.
Yeah.
Which we have people do. We have probably the 1% club.
Yeah.
Or the 5% club goes to the next offer. So up the value ladder.
Yeah. So what would be your value ladder, if you don't mind sharing?
Value ladders, podcast is free. Money Grows on Trees podcast is free. They go into that. There's a lot of episodes there. They can build a bit of relationship. I think Daniel Priestley, he's the one that said, people got to spend 7.5 hours with you somehow. So then they get the book, which is, of entry level, and they spend another 4 hours listening to the audio, which is wonderful. And they read it, and they want to implement some of those things. And we have some order bumps in the funnel and upsell in the funnel. That's a course, which is cool. That liquidates a lot of the ad spend. And then, we have our core offer, which is a 6-month money mentorship program. So we go through financial literacy and investing principles and making money principles and managing money principles and money mindset for a 6-month period. Very integrated, a lot of contact. And then beyond that, those people that come through, they do want to develop a business, because they do realize that after they've invested, after they've managed their money well, after they've got their mindset right and they've kind of settled in, a lot of the attention should go to some sort of enterprise that they can build outside their job that actually increases their income, which is a business. And so we have an elite business coaching program that I do that's a 12-month program that's actually designed just for that. And
That's really cool.
yeah, so that's where we go up to the premium value offer, and it makes a huge difference in your lifetime value of clients too when you have that available.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say there are, at least in my personal experience, and maybe you can elaborate on this, but I'd say that there's four really like key areas that people need to be focusing on if they want to reach the highest level of wealth that they can. And like the first thing they need to focus on is obviously like their capacity for earning, whether that's, currently maybe they're just working a job or they have a side hustle or whatever it is, and like
Yeah.
maximizing that for the
Yes.
highest output. The next thing then would be like keeping money. And the way that I would kind of consider this is like more or less focusing on the gap between your income and your expenses, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and then investing money, obviously, to multiply it, and then taxes, And
Yes.
so, are
That's
any or
correct.
all of these things kind of covered in your books?
Yes. I do it the other way around. Yes, they are. So I've got in my book, Money Buys Happiness. I don't have a copy on me right now, but it's digital anyway. I don't really have a hard copy unless they get through parts of the course content.
I'll be
It's a
sure to
5 steps.
drop an image here.
Yeah, sure thing. It it's 5 steps, and so in my book I talk about these 5 steps to millions, and that's what the program's called, 5 steps to millions. It's your first million. The first one I do is mindset, because I help them unpack these money stories they've been telling themselves that are not true. And then we go into mentorship, so learning how to be mentored and coachable and be correctly, like seeking other, paying for proximity, things like that are really important concepts. And then the manage money process we do first, because a lot of them actually have jobs and are just mismanaging money. And if they do that, they can't even start a side hustle. They can't even, they're just in crisis, a lot of them. And so we've got to really sort that out first. So we come in and do the manage money modules first. Then they can create some sort of financial stability and peace, which is great. And then they have enough to learn how to invest. Like if it's $200 a month or $100 a month, there's enough.
Yeah.
And we do the investing because it's very high payoff for them to learn the practical side of actually opening a brokerage account, understanding what an index fund is. Like that's very high winning. Like that's the whole course value would just be in that alone, because that's what you'd be shocked as to how many people just wouldn't have a clue about that space.
For sure.
And then beyond that, once they've done those 4 steps, then they go, and the penny drops. They go, I've been managed my money. And now I know how to invest. This is great. Cool. When am I going to be a million? I'm like, well, now you know the process. How are we going to scale this? How are we going to escalate it? How are we going to increase your income? And that's when they start to look for other incomes outside the job. So you're right on all the things you said are correct, but we just happen to do it that way around because we don't necessarily attract business owners.
Yeah.
And if I started out trying to teach them how to increase your income first, I think that we lose a lot of, we wouldn't get them through the other ones because it's the hardest step, because it requires the most behavior changes. That's why. It's not because it's hard. It's just because it requires people to change the most.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I agree. And it's so much easier to just be able to, like you said, open a brokerage account, set some money aside into it and watch it just grow.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah. Like even if people just maxed out their IRA every year, in an index fund, and if they just got that out of it, wonderful. That will help them build wealth. But we both know that inflation and like the cost of living, it's just not enough now. So there is this requirement now to actually have 2 incomes, not one. So I do, and in my offer, the core offer we have, the most of the time is spent on the money stuff, because the other stuff is pretty straightforward. There's not a huge amount of modules or lessons on that. It's pretty easy, but we spent a good 8 weeks, couple of months on let's get your side hustle chosen. Let's get it. People don't even know what they want to do. And there's just so many options out there, but I think that it keeps coming back to, well, now I've chosen my option. Shivers, I have to still learn marketing principles no matter what. If I'm selling, even if I'm an Uber driver, you have to do it. It's the same. No matter where you go, there you are with no marketing skills. So we really do talk about basic marketing skills, and you know what it's like. I mean, well, in the in America and some parts of North America, there seems to be a tendency for people to jump on and use social media without any hang-ups. But in Australia, we have a lot of insecurities around that. We don't have effective money stories. We're not we're not good with tech here in Australia. So we battle with even just getting someone to do a Facebook post.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that.
So that's where people are at with making money. They're like, oh, I'm scared to do a post. I'm like, holy shit. It's 2025. It's not like 1990. It's not 2004 MySpace. It's like 20 years now, guys. Like, so my business partner, so I think who it was, might have been him. He said, what's interesting about the education space is that together as a collective, we're all raising the consciousness levels of the world, because we're actually we're dragging people to a new skill set, a new mindset. And so we're actually all together collectively moving the consciousness level of the earth, which is a pretty rad thing.
To say the very least. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So that was a good way of
amazing.
thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting the way you put that. I've been talking a lot about, especially with inflation, and then the conversation added to inflation of like AI and other things of that nature potentially coming in and automating jobs. Like, I don't know if you've heard about this or not. I don't know if it's true or not. I know I saw something online talked about the idea that they have their first fully automated, I think it's either a Taco Bell or a McDonald's restaurant.
Yeah.
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 And
I have seen that.
yeah. And now
Yeah.
they're having these humanoid robots and stuff. And it's like, it's causing us to have to, I'd say the word I would use is like evolve, essentially. Right.
Yes.
And it's like, we have to adapt these new skill sets, like marketing
Yes.
and other things of that nature, to be able to earn what's needed in order to have our basic needs,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I've got a new book. Actually, it looks like this. This one here.
Time rich. Okay. Nice.
Brand new. We just got a publishing deal with Wiley to publish it in the United States and all over the world, which is a big deal for us. It's our first published book.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. It came about because the people I was teaching money to, what I learned was they actually didn't have necessarily a money problem. They had an inability to manage their time and sit down quietly and even look at their bank statements. But getting to your point about what we must do with the development of AI, even now, is I'm noticing that people's inability to delegate is now a huge block for them, because you could have the Optimus robot come to your house and be ready, and then people don't even know how to delegate to it. Like, they don't even know how to delegate to Google. They can't even delegate to ChatGPT. They're just trying to do all the work themselves because they're stuck in a paradigm that they grew up with, which is if you want a job done right, you got to do it yourself. And so all these subconscious patterns are in them, and so they can't even delegate. Like, they're looking for someone to help them all the time. Hey, can you show me? Like, go and use technology to teach you. So you're right. We have to learn. People have to now more ferociously than ever learn how to learn. Or they have to be learning machines even probably faster.
Yeah.
If you want to get ahead quicker, because AI agents are coming fast. Like, everyone, like in the next couple of years, you and our agents might chat to each other instead of us. So, and what, people can't even Google like what time it is in flipping Australia. Like, it's crazy how unskilled people are at these soft skills.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And it's only going to, I think, progress in that direction, where people are going to continue to have to know less and less and do less and less. But like at the same time, how do I want to say this? The information required to do what's required is going to be raised. So you're going to have to know significantly more in order to just do basic functions. So
it's interesting. Yes, you're right. And funny, the thing with knowledge, and Warren Buffett talks a lot about this, that knowledge compounds. And so what I'm aware of is I'm aware not to step out of the game completely, because if you miss some of that, like, it's like if you missed grade 5 math. Like, if you missed percentages and you missed, like, those basic, your ability to manage money just completely gets destroyed. Like, I've seen people that miss those math classes or didn't pay attention, and it has such a massive knock-on effect. So if we miss together what's happening with the development of AI, or we miss a year or two here because we're on sabbatical or whatever, you do miss some things. You got to play catch up. And last time I checked, catch up is a flipping hard. Catch up becomes even harder because of Moore's law of computer power doubling every 18 months. And that's without AI. I think now with AI, geez, it could double every flipping month. So
Yeah.
you have to be abreast of it, and I'm afraid of getting left behind. And I've seen what that does to people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. They just completely can't participate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know,
It's a very sad and scary reality, but that's where we have to, do the due diligence of like arming people with the information that's going to help them be successful, like your books and stuff. So with that said, if you wouldn't mind telling me, what are your top 3 favorite principles that you teach in your books?
yeah, what a good question. Look, it's not sexy, but the first principle is I talk to people about, how often do you brush your teeth? The answer's every day. And then I say, how often do you have a shower? And then hopefully the answer is every day. And I asked them why, and they said, well, because otherwise I get, I start to smell and I get sick. And I was like, yeah, that's right. So I say to them, how often do you shower your money? Like how, or even I talk about going on a date with your spouse. If you don't go on date night with your partner, how are you going to have a good relationship? And the answer is no. So I say to them, when was the last time you had a date with your money? And so what that the notion is that I'm suggesting they spend time looking at their bank statement. And the weird thing is that most people don't look at it, which is mind blowing to me.
Yeah,
I'm telling
for real.
they don't. The people they just don't. Oh, actually, I'm supposed to look at it when? I was like, every single month for the rest of your life. Oh, sure, I didn't. Same as a shower. But they just don't understand. They just think it's going to sort itself out. So I think the first principle is every single month, sit down and do an audit of your bank statement so you have more ins than outs. That's critical. And if you don't, stop having Uber Eats. Stop getting on Amazon. Delete the apps. Stop going on Temu. And it's like, what do you mean I got to stop going on Temu? I'm like, your behavior is doing that. It's not the money. The money is very simple. 1 + 1 is 2. It's our behaviors that actually dictate where the money goes. Because people are like, oh, where's my money going? I'm like, it's going where you send it. It doesn't have legs. Mm-hmm. And so it's this personal development of like this mirror. And that's why people don't want to look at their bank statement, because it hurts them to see their shortcomings. I get it. We all have them. Yeah. But that's critically important. The second one is once you do look at that and do that, the objective is to pay yourself first. And it comes from the richest man in Babylon. It's not a new concept. It's many eons of years old. But people are paying the tax office, the phone bill, this, that, the rent. They're paying everyone else but themselves first. And so the trick is to pay, as soon as their paycheck hits, take a percentage, call it 10%, and put it away into a separate account. That's critically important. And once they do that, they're at least halfway there. And I would say the third concept is keeping your definitely learning to invest, but keeping it simple. And if you can, putting it into a tax-effective account and putting it into an index fund and just repeating that process and learning the notion of repeating what works and not switching around and looking for the next shiny object of Bitcoin or gold or this or that. It's just keeping it simple, and it comes from lessons from Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger and these incredible money managers. So they're the 3 big concepts. Mm-hmm. If they get them sorted out, then at least we have a chance for them to actually go and make money. Because if they don't sort those out, what's the point in them making more money?
Yeah, for real.
It's going to get frittered away.
It's like there's I would call it like the leaky bucket syndrome, right? Where it's like, you could put more and more water in, but like the problem is you have a hole in your bucket. So like,
that's right. Exactly. Yeah. And a small hole can sink a big ship. And one of the things people have to understand is that if they can't do it with small money, then as they build their business, if they do get to $1 million a year, they're still not going to be able to do it. And how many entrepreneurs, you probably know a ton. Yes. I know so many that have that they're making, I did $100,000 month, or I did this, and they have no flavor money.
Yeah.
Because they're not following simple principles that they should have done when they were making $1,000 a month, to an extent. So your behaviors follow you all the way up, and your money rules. That's another great concept. Is I teach money rules. So set your money rules, and once you set them, it's like having boundaries for children when they're young. If you don't put boundaries, you say, go drink alcohol at 12. That's a good idea. If you do, it's those things. And so, of course, if you don't have boundaries for kids, they're going to run riot. And if you don't have boundaries for your own money, you're going to run riot. So you have to set these money rules. Did an episode on this on my podcast, and that is well received because finally people have the rules of the game. They've got some tracks to run on. And all of a sudden, if they're running on the tracks, they then are confronted with a decision to make. They have some a decision-making tree to run it through at least, which is going to only enhance their wealth.
Definitely. It's like the idea of teaching a man to fish versus giving him a fish, and it's like,
Totally.
and then at the same time, you have the ability to give them the rod and, the fish hook and everything.
Yes.
And it's really powerful stuff. But so tell me a little bit about how it is that you got into the background of learning about these different concepts and things of that nature.
Yeah, what a good question. It's, again, I thought mistakenly that people read books like Rich Dad Poor Dad and Richest Man in Babylon when they were 18. I just thought that. A teacher of mine at school actually suggested those two books, which is very fortuitous.
Yeah.
I listened and I went and got them and read them, which helped me understand some basic concepts. But what happened was I was living in Dubai. I gave my money to a financial advisor. He put it into a funds of funds, like it just was bad. And I didn't lose a ton, but I lost enough for it to hurt. And I'm like, why did I give no one's going to love your money more than you, or no one's going to want to look after it more than you. And so I was like, why did I outsource that completely to this person? What makes him special? What makes me not special? And I realized that I can learn anything. So I'm like, well, let me learn this money thing. So I remember at the time, everyone was buying property. Property seems to be the go-to asset class for most people because it's very easy to understand. It's like, buy a house, put a tenant in there, you pay me rent, I pay mortgage, the end. It's very easy. But in Dubai, there was no way I could really own real estate because they have 99-year leases there. And it just was not a good time for me to start loading up with debt in my 20s. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? So I actually, at a bookstore once, on going on a flight, I found this book by Warren Buffett. Well, it's about Warren Buffett's life, called The Snowball by Alice Schroeder. And I thought that investing in stocks is all about charts and trading and sitting in front of a computer and the Wolf of Wall Street and blah, blah, blah. And it's just not that at all. It's a complete opposite of that, thankfully. And through that book, I learned about Warren Buffett's life. And in the book was my first introduction to what's called value investing, where you're buying assets, businesses, which are what stocks are, pieces of businesses for a lot less than what they're worth. And that concept of buying things for a lot less than what they're worth was very easy for me to grasp. I grasped it very quickly. And that was what started me on the journey of learning. And then beyond that, I've literally read, you can see in my office here, I read all the books on investing I can get my hands on.
That's awesome.
And I did the CFA charter program. So I'm actually a lawyer by profession. I actually graduated law school and became a lawyer. And I did corporate finance at law as an elective to learn, which helped a little bit. But it wasn't until I did the CFA charter program, which is the hardest exam in the financial world ever. It's like a 6-hour closed book exam once a year. It's a nightmare. And I signed up, and I for 5 years, I failed level 1 twice, passed it, went to level 2, passed it, got to level 3. And I went to sit the exam level 3, which is the final level, where you start to learn how to levitate. And, it's, and then I got into network marketing and realized I could scale my money. I was like, why am I doing the CFA? What's the point in it? I was in small business at that point. So I'm like, what's the point in getting another designation? I've got all these degrees and like, why? And so I had this big battle in my head to step away from it to focus on actually making money. But what did help me in that process was becoming an analyst. So it taught me derivatives and financial statement analysis and statistics and probabilities. And it taught me, equities and bonds. And I mean, there's 10 topics across. So I really threw myself in the deep end doing that. And it was brutal. So like I was in my house in Dubai studying 20 hours a week, like for 6 months, using all my annual leave and weekends. And my roommates are in flipping Brazil at the Carnivale partying. So that's what it looked like. And I knew, I thought myself, one day this will pay off. One day it will pay off. Because the reason I thought that is because few people would do that, would sit there and study while their friends are away. They wouldn't. It's just ridiculous. So I thought it'll pay off. And then eventually it did, but it wasn't for another 10 years it would pay off,
Yeah.
So that's how I got in. That's how I learned more than most people about money and finance. I actually threw myself into a very high level course.
Yeah. And that CFA I can say is definitely one of the hardest ones out there without question. I personally have not done it. I got a degree in finance, like a bachelor's, and that's it. It was enough for me to get my hands dirty and all that and grasp a bunch of different concepts. But the number one area where I developed a lot of my understanding of investing and stuff was actually in an investment simulator. where it allows you to trade real
Oh yeah,
time
cool.
with fake money. And
Yep,
yeah,
that helps.
to anybody who's out there listening and is interested in getting their hands dirty without losing their money right away, or being afraid to lose their money, more specifically, you can get a huge grasp on it doing
Yeah,
that way, which is
that's
great.
a good thing too. I remember my buddy. He was like a trader. He came out of university and I went to school with him. And he sent me one of those. He sent me one of those, testing accounts, trial
Hmm.
accounts. You could do that. And I remember getting on there and like buying gold and buying it, and I just had no idea what the hell I was doing. And I was like, "What the?" And then years later, it wasn't until I read Warren Buffett's book. I think, to be frank, reading those books, not the CFA, but the actual books anyone can pick up off Amazon, I would say help me the most.
Yeah.
Like self education helped me the most. It
What
really
would be
was.
your top three books that you would recommend that people read?
Well, when I read, I think the Snowball is really good because you learn the basic concepts and the life of someone who is the best at it. The second one, if you read that book, you then learn about The Intelligent Investor by Ben Graham, which is
Mm,
arguably the number one book of all time on investing. I think that's a great one. It's a little bit challenging in some areas, but chapter 8 is critically important. And then the third one is probably, God, there's so many good ones. I like Manish Prabhai's book called The Dando Investor.
mm,
I think that's really good. But again, I think you pick up financial statement. Yeah, so many. I couldn't tell you. Like, I love all of them.
that's great.
One
Awesome.
up on Wall Street, Peter Lynch. Yeah, there's so many, but they're the three I think. Snowball, Intelligent Investor, and the Dando Investor.
Okay. I actually have not surprisingly read any of those. I did read The Intelligent Investor and some other ones. I had a similar experience to you where a professor recommended some. I remember it was really interesting. Like day one of the classroom, he comes in and he's like, I've studied a lot of psychology and I have friends that are psychologists. And, I realized that professors may not be able to get the attention of their students, but this is one thing that I can do that can get your attention. And he puts his portfolio up on the screen and it's $2 million
Nice,
in the account. And he's like, so
nice.
if you want to know how to do something like this, then you should pay attention in my class. And I was like, that's the guy. I want to learn from him.
Yeah, that's very clever of him to do that.
Yeah.
That would resonate with me, and I think a lot of young men.
Hmm.
It would resonate with, and I wish that was done more. Like, well, I don't personally because I'm in financial education, so I don't care if it's not taught in school, but it should be done more. That,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Without a doubt. But he recommended some of those books that you've mentioned, like The Richest Man in Babylon and other things of that nature.
sure.
And another one, I think it was The Elements of Investing. And I want to know your opinion because I read this book and it taught me the strategy of cost averaging. And I just want to
Oh, dollar
know,
cost averaging.
yeah, I just want to know
Yeah,
your opinions on that.
yeah. I mean, well, the way the stock market works is that businesses compound really on a daily basis. Like the productivity of businesses do compound on a daily basis when people are working in the businesses. So, of course, the stock price does compound daily. If you really skin it back, it might be 14% of the year or 12% for the year, but it will compound daily. So, to statistically, it's better to have more money in today than later. So, if you do have a lump sum, statistically, it's shown that putting it in right now and leaving it there is still arguably one of the best strategies. But if you don't have a lump sum, the second best strategy is to dollar cost average in, which means as soon as you get some money, take out some and put it in, and do that consistently the same over the same period, so monthly or quarterly, depending on when you choose, without any hesitation or emotion attached to it. So you're not timing the market, and by doing that, you are putting in as much as you can within reason as early as you can, so that you're accumulating daily compounding as fast as possible with the money you've got. And it is without a doubt, it's shown statistically across many studies that that is the most effective way to minimize risk of timing the market and mistiming the market, and also getting to the habit of putting your money to work consistently. And yeah, without a doubt, it's a great way to invest. I mean, I wish I could do it, but I don't. I wish I could index, but I'm a value guy. Like before I got on the call, I just bought $200,000 worth of a Chinese equity, and I've
Nice.
got like I don't know, probably about 700,000 or 800,000 in Chinese equities just sitting there. Now that's a very unusual strategy, but if you understand certain concepts, I think it's very riskless. But I find it very difficult. Once you know the game of value investing, buying a dollar bill for 50 cents, it's so hard to index and it's so hard to just put on autopilot because it's just such a fun game.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So
Those
that's why.
highs that you get from doing a really solid investment, getting anywhere between like 50% plus is really just like
Yeah,
nothing
totally.
beats it.
Yeah, it's a
um,
good feeling. It's fun. So there you
yeah. So what were some of your first ever like exciting big wins in investing?
go. I think the first big win for me was when in Australia I've got to contend with the Australian dollar being against the US dollar oscillating and varying. And so back in 2000, after the GFC, which I didn't have enough money back then because I was only like 23, but I had a lot of excitement because the stocks were so cheap in 2009 and 2010. So I was like, this is great. So, I mean, I was getting these good deals back then. But the best deal I think I did was I was buying at parity. So I could buy, Australian dollar was selling for $1 US, which is crazy. And I was buying Berkshire Hathaway for Berkshire Hathaway B class shares for $80.
Wow.
And it was like selling for 1.1 times book value, which is cheap. And I was just pumping everything I had into that. And I think I got it to like, I made a couple $100,000 out of that because I made an FX gain, which is tax free, which is fun. And then I remember I copied or I cloned Warren Buffett's investment in Bank of America, and I doubled my money in a year doing that.
Nice.
What's interesting about that is later on last year I doubled it again with Bank of America last year. So sometimes the opportunity, when in America when the banking crisis, the regional banking crisis happened in the last 2 years. So when that happened, they threw the baby out with the bathwater, and Bank of America was one of them, and just got hammered. It went from $50 to $20 or $3. And I saw Lee Lu, who's Charlie Munger's disciple, one of the best investors around, and he just loaded in 30% of his portfolio. And I was like, shit, I'm going to load this in. So I chucked in like $500,000,
Nice.
and it was a fast double. And so that was probably my biggest win to date. That was big because in investing, it's not about, for me, it's not always about like, can I 5x this or 10x this? Because that takes time. But what can I find that's very safe that I can deploy a lot of money in it, and it's a very simple double that creates so much money. I've got this Discord channel where I chat with some of my students about investing, and I share lots of things in there every day. And some of them are really clever. Like I'll create ideas there. Like I was talking about Citigroup at $45 a share and stuff, which was cheap. It's now like 80 a year later. And wonderful opportunities, and they're all jumping in and they're loving it and they understand the concept, so it's fine. But they hold it, right, so they're good. I'm not as patient as some of them, but what is interesting, they'll like say, hey, I've got 100% on this position. I'm like, awesome, what was your position sizing? They go, I put $1,000 in. I'm like, fuck. So and they learn that they may outdo me in percentage sometimes of my own positions because they hold them for longer, which is smart. But they just can't compete because I'm just putting in a lot. So I learned early on that position sizing is as equally as important as picking.
Yeah.
Because you could be the best stock picker in the world, and you could nail all that. You could have bought Amazon, and if you didn't put a reasonably good sized position in there, it really doesn't move the needle. It doesn't. So you have to really have a lot of conviction when it comes to picking your stocks. And conviction and position sizing, very important. So that's why I find it difficult. I just bought this miner today. It's really interesting. Do you know who Manish Prabhai is?
I do not.
So he's a disciple. He's a friend of... He bought... Warren Buffett has this charity that he runs, or he used to run it, where he would auction off a lunch with him, an hour lunch, whatever. And, I think it was auctioning off for $5 million for a lunch and give it to charity. So Manish, together with Guy Spear, who's one of these two super investors, they got together and bought lunch with Warren. And so they became friends with Warren. They met Charlie. And anyway, Manish became great friends with Charlie Munger. And so he is now doing a lot of education. He wrote that book, The Dando Investor, really good book. Anyway, recently I looked at his portfolio because I look at the big investors' portfolios every quarter. He had a lot of good ideas from that.
Yeah.
And he put like 50% of his portfolio into coal mining stocks, which was really interesting. I was like, holy shit, that's so interesting. Like coal mining? Why? So my curiosity alarm bells go off and I'm like, well, I'm gonna try and understand this
Mm-hmm.
play here. And so I looked at these companies, AMR, and I looked at CIX, like these companies in the USA coal miners. And what I noticed was on the balance sheet, they had like billions they had like free cash. They had no debt, and they were pumping free cash flow, and they were selling for like 2 billion, but they're making like $500 million a year in free cash flow. So you get your money back effectively in 3 or 4 years. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. Then I learned, okay, what makes coal effective? So I started to analyze, like, well, what's the difference between metallurgical coal and thermal coal? And thermal coal is used for heating electricity, big in China. But then metallurgical coal or coking coal is used in steel production. And so what happened in the coal industry was with all these regulations of clean energy and so forth, this clean energy fad, that they threw out the coal, but they threw the baby out with the bathwater, and that was coking coal. They threw it out. So met coal, they still need. Like, oh shit, we need that. And so there was a massive sell-off of these coal stocks because it was like, oh, coal's dead. And then so they're selling for like 2.5 times earnings, which is ridiculous. Yeah. And so I'm like, holy shit, this is insane. So you still need coal. So the supply gap is massive. So in 2027, it'll be very undersupplied coal. And so I'm like, this is interesting. So then what I did was, well, I didn't really want to put more position into the United States because right now the Australian dollar sucks against the USA greenback. So I'm like, well, shit, I don't really want to lose FX later. So what can I do? How can I replicate this in Australia, which is a very resource-rich country? So I unpacked some of these coal miners in Australia. And the other day I came across this company, Yancoal, which is the coal producer in Australia, leading coal producer. It's an $8 billion company. And I looked at it and I understood. I'm like, holy crap, this thing has $2.5 billion of cash on its balance sheet. It just created $500 million in the last quarter of free cash. And they just missed out on an acquisition. So they've literally got $2.5 billion in cash sitting on their balance sheet. And they pay dividends. Then in Australia, they're tax-free.
Wow.
So I'm like, take my money. Yeah. So I started just buying and loading up on this company. And so I think that's a good indication of what it takes to have an understanding of why picking individual stocks is hard, because no one does the research. So these opportunities, they walk by people, but they don't know they exist because they don't have the skill set to unpack them.
Yeah, that's definitely the biggest part of the conviction, right? Because like I think
yes,
this is my personal opinion. I don't know if you'll agree with this or disagree, and so be it. But I find that the conversation of like diversification is, it's helpful in certain contexts, but I think defining those contexts is really important because, for example, you're talking about the gentleman who just put 50% of his portfolio into one sector. It's like that is not as diversified as it could be, and it goes back to that conversation of I call it like the weight that you put in it, but you used I think the word like volume, and it's like how much money do you put in that one position? Because then you could be turning around and doing crazy.
Position sizing is critical, and it's focus, and so Andrew Carnegie was the one that famously said, wealth is about putting all your eggs in one basket and then watching that basket. He coined that phrase, and he was the richest man in the world in the late 1800s. So it's the same as investing. You can put your eggs in one basket as long as you really understand the basket.
Yes.
And so like that comes from Warren Buffett and Charlie, because that in their career they had more than their net worth in one stock at one time. Like it's not about should I diversify or should I not. It's about, well, what's the risk of not diversifying and what's the risk of diversifying. So like for example, if you had a situation where, and I've seen this, like I invested in a Chinese stock last year that had $9 billion of cash on its balance sheet, $4 billion in debt, so it had $5 billion net cash, and it was selling in the marketplace for $2 billion. You could buy the whole company. So you could buy the whole company for $2 billion and had $5 billion cash. So you're basically buying a $5 note for $2 effectively. And so if you think about that type of opportunity, and they were paying a 55% dividend the next quarter. Yeah. So obviously I loaded into that, and I made all my money back, just 50% of the money back in the dividend. It was just the downside was completely protected. So like they're the types of things where you can actually swing big without any risk.
Yeah.
Like there is some risk, but the risk is so minimal that you can't almost get it wrong. So those types of things you can swing big at. But if you don't find them, don't swing big. And I think it is appropriate. I agree with you 100%. But I also have been caught out a little bit sometimes with I've swung 30% of the portfolio at something, and it's kind of like I've never really like seen it fall or I've never really lost that much money at all in the market, but it's gone sideways for 3 years, and that hurts because you're like, the opportunity cost, I could have put that into an index fund and fucking made $500,000. So there's the opportunity cost that hurts you, but at some point you've got to focus your investments or focus your time on one business. Like focus is a very important concept of scaling. So I wholeheartedly agree with you. The thing that I've learned about the diversification is, for me personally, I can comfortably hold five, maximum 10 stocks, and that's the number. Like you can get away with beating the market if you hold 5 to 10 or 3 to 10, but you can't do it if you hold 20 plus it's so hard because there's not enough. There's this concept called diversification. You may have heard of it. It's where you diversify and it makes your returns worse.
Yep.
So Warren Buffett says, if you're going to diversify, which is really just insurance against ignorance, he said, just put your money into the S&P 500, be fully diversified if that's the case, and then sit on your ass. Like, so that's good too. And I think that's why it's so good for 99% of people to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm just not cut that way. Like I
feel
see these all the time on X. Like on X, I don't know if you live on X, but I live on X and it's my favorite social media platform. And I see these amazing quotes all the time, like, index and sit on your ass and, put it in VU and then go on holidays, and which is all good. And they say 99% of people should just buy the index and forget about it. I'm like, yes, but I just don't think I'm one of the 99%. I think I'm a 1%er. And so I think I've had to grasp that the last couple of years, because I almost went all into indexing because I had these, especially the last few years, because I had these people that had no idea about it just killing me. I was like, oh my God. But that's also subject to the fact we've just gone through arguably the greatest bull market in history. So,
yeah, it was a beautiful time.
Yeah, I think it's the second biggest. The 90s was the biggest bull market. I think we've just recently capped off the largest. Like, it's still going.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm aware of that. I'm acutely aware that I'm not positioning my portfolio my portfolio is positioned with cash-rich, cheap companies. It's not in NVIDIA and tech, the Mag 7. It's not, because we can't just keep compounding it. The S&P can't keep compounding at 20% a year. It won't happen. There'll be a drawdown at some point. I just don't know when.
Definitely. Awesome.
So,
obviously you know your stuff, and you dropped a ton of value and been able to run circles around the idea of all these different concepts and ways of looking at investing and everything. What other tidbits do you have really quickly in terms of like what it takes to scale your business essentially?
Yeah. I think that's where the reason I also wrote my new book is because of some of those concepts are in that book. So it's called Become Time Rich. In fact, if you go to Amazon now, I think you can pre-order it. It won't be launched till May, but if you type that in, I think it'll pop up. And it's like these 4 laws. It's like, the first law is having a definite purpose. So really understanding what it is you're going to work on. Because if you don't understand that, you'll be distracted by everything. The second thing is the law of elimination. And the law of elimination is to eliminate. So you don't want to manage the unnecessary. You want to eliminate it. And I think this is where people go wrong. So I was able to eliminate. I walked away from the CFA charter. I left a business. I eliminated weekends and evenings. And, your ability to eliminate the things that aren't going to pay off is effective. And then the third one is the biggest one, which is leverage. And so I learned this from Naval Ravikant's book, The Almanac, where it's about, people leverage, systems leverage, and capital leverage. So I learned, I think, through Dan Sullivan's book too, Who Not How to scale effectively is to figure out what you want to, what your greatness is you want to bring to the world. So what's your skill set? What do you want to help people with? What problem do you want to solve? And then, who's going to help you do that? So developing, who's going to build your funnel and who's going to do this and identifying those people and finding them out and really paying them to do the work. That's that's critically important. And then developing systems to take the heavy lifting out of it. And I think then the fourth one, which is the law of priority. So like priority and boundaries. And I read this great book by John Mark Comer called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And that really helped me to prioritize what I was doing. You know, so we in our businesses, we have this thing called what's the linchpin? And what's the one thing? And Gary Keller talks about in his book, The One Thing, but what's the one thing that if we solve this problem, it makes all the other problems go away, or it scales us the most? And so we work every month on what's our linchpin. And I full force into that myself personally, and I help with the team solve that problem the most. And I know that Elon does that across his 18,000 million companies he's running. So
Right.
that's probably very critical. And so it's the law of priority. And I know that's probably not as tactically what people are looking for, and you got to work your flipping ass off, man. Like you got to get up early. You got to just whip it. You got to go after it. You got to just work.
That's really cool.
As
Great
well.
advice. And
Yeah.
I second every piece of that. So if anybody is interested in either getting a hold of your book or, getting in contact with you, where's the best places that they can do that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the easiest place to find me is Instagram. My handle is Lloyd James Ross. You can go there and check my link tree. It's got my podcast, which is free, a book there. But if you go to moneybuyshappinessbook.com, that's my money book, my latest money book. And of course, if you want to go check out our latest one, we launched in May, go to Amazon and type in Become Time Rich and you'll see that there. And that's how you find me and go full force.
Yeah.
And I'll see you at Funnel Hackers.
Amen. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Lloyd. This has been extremely informational, and it sounds like you're helping change a lot of lives for the better. So keep up the great
Thanks
work.
for having me on, man. I appreciate you. Thank you.